Hello all, good evening. I'm Terry Thornton. I'm Curator of Education at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, and I am pleased to welcome you to tonight's very special presentation by the artist Marina Adams in conjunction with Focus Marina Adams, which was curated by the Modern's own Allison Hurst, opened last Friday and runs through January 10th. With a BFA from Tyler School of Art, Temple University, and an MFA from Columbia University, Marina Adams is a contemporary artist whose abstract paintings, gleaned from history, art history, architecture, textile design, poetry, literature, life, engage the viewer with their visual weight, order, and the evidence of their making. With her husband, the artist Stanley Whitney, Marina lives and works in both New York and Parma, Italy. Not sure exactly how that's working right now with the pandemic, but that's generally, I think, the plan. Her work is shown and collected internationally, written about extensively, and included in books of poetry, which are actually collaborative endeavors. Marina received a John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship in 2016 and an American Academy of Arts and Letters for painting in 2018. In 2020, she has been incredibly busy despite the pandemic restrictions with numerous group exhibitions and of course the Moderns exhibition Focus Marina Adams. In addition, she's been preparing for a new solo exhibition opening in early 2021 at Stephen Friedman Gallery in London. All to say, we are in for a treat as Marina presents what she has titled Breath Notes. After which there will be a Q&A generated by you, so feel free to write questions using the tab below throughout, and then in the end, Marina will entertain as many of those questions as time allows. So if you would, from your various locations, let's give Marina a hand, a shout out, and with that, I'll turn it over to you, Marina.
Thank you, Terry. Wonderful introduction.
Oh, thank you.
So title page, the venue, beautiful venue, which I hope to get down to see the exhibition and all of the work in the collection of the museum. It's already open up until January 10th. So hopefully that's plenty of time for you to get by and take a look. And so the first slide or image, I think slide dates me, but the first image I'm going way back to when I was a student, and it's a painting, it's a self-portrait. And I really had no idea what I was doing. And so, I knew artists painted self-portraits, so I went there. It was really about trying to figure out, I think when I was young, I always felt that I was an artist, but I didn't really know what that entailed. So I did get myself into art school and started to look and study. And anyway, this was a painting that I painted early on, I think either my first or second year. And it was chosen and put in the student show and kind of the main spot, the spotlight. And I was really mortified. I didn't want the spotlight on me because I really felt like I didn't know what I had done. But it does show influences and things I was thinking about and certainly love, and certain things like, as it keeps being brought up, pattern, my love of pattern is clear from the get-go. And also a kind of seriousness, I guess, kind of, a serious look out. This is a very small painting, second one. Not this one, this one. On board, actually, because I used to paint on canvas boards. John, go to the second slide. There, okay. just because it was fast, I guess easy, it was able for me to do a lot of work without having to, and it was very inexpensive and fast. I put it in because the subject matter, when you're young, finding your subject matter is very difficult, I guess, or for me it was. And so looking at, I guess, particularly Matisse, and thinking about just painting what was there, painting where I was, painting. I lived in a very small 3-room apartment, kitchen, bedroom, and studio, basically. Turned the whole place into my studio and just painted painted the space, painted what was there. And you can see the use of black was also out of Matisse. It's one of the things that I just loved in his work and found for me was also very accessible to use black as both a dark and a light. And then you see the light all different kinds of light coming in, But as I say, the subject matter just came from my surroundings. Basically, I painted where I lived. This is another one. Maybe a little more, I guess, more and less, more chaotic. I sort of wanted to I wanted to sort of let the craziness in, I guess. I wanted to open things up and also, sort of complicate and simplify all at the same time. But you can see references to, even on the left, the outline of a chair, which I then flattened using just a pattern, and sort of background space were also paintings. My work was everywhere, sort of living in the middle of your studio. And just trying to figure out what it was to make a painting. And I guess even then, when I felt that something was enough, was when there was a kind of clarity, because you can still see the white of the canvas is still there. I drew with charcoal. I'm looking back now, but I can see how I went about the making of it. This is a few years later, I actually applied to graduate school and moved to New York. And I brought sort of two things with me, really. I brought my paintings and I brought all my plants. And again, I just continued to use my things, my surroundings as subject matter, without a clear agenda in terms of ideas or concepts. It was really very much about a physicality and drawing and, just making something that was exciting, I guess, to turn a blank white rectangle into something that I felt had energy and was exciting in its surface. You can see color is limited. I often would get rid of color and just concentrate on the drawing. And these are things I think that when you're a young artist, a young painter in particular, you really have to work on. You have to work on the drawing, you have to work on the structure, and color and touch. I kind of knew even then would come later. I trusted, I guess, in the process. And that's a big thing about being an artist. So. And I was also, I was in grad school, so I was also doing drawings, and I had just started, I did some printmaking, et cetera, so that all fed into it. And this is probably the biggest painting I'd painted up until that time. And I had it in my graduate show. They're 2 6x6 inch canvases that I put together. So it's 6 by 12 feet. And, again, as I say, it was the first time I worked that large and really sort of got my body into it. I was also trying to give up the references. And so you can see there's a search here going on. And the fallback, again, was the paint. It was color, it was light, it was basic things, line and shape, and mark making, a lot of mark making early on, which is something you'll also see, you often see in young people's work. And I remember, we had, as graduate students, you have all these visiting artists in, and I remember putting this, I had finished this and I put it up, and I had Ronnie Bladen in, and who's passed away now. And he was fabulous in the studio. He was such a sort of a beacon of light for me. He was very positive and very encouraging. And he just went up to this painting and sort of like practically touched it. I mean, he really reveled in the light and the surface. And it was really, for me, it was really a thrilling moment. This I had just, again, through graduate school. So student days were over. I moved into a studio in the meat market, or the old meat market, I'll say, down on 14th Street, way west, and shared a big space with some other painters or some other artists. And again, just tried to, continue figuring out. A lot of it was just figuring out what, subject matter was. When I look back at this early work, I really see that. I mean, I really was just, formally trying to divide up the canvas and create a space and, drawing something that was somehow convincing without being too referential. I was never a figurative painter, really, even though I brought and allowed images in and let things into the work. I was never a storyteller. I was never a narrative, painter. And so it was, trying to work all of this out. And then, again, living in New York, thinking about the New York school, thinking about, abstract expressionism. These paintings were really all made all very improvisational. It was really just starting somewhere, putting down marks and moving and reacting and responding and crossing out and painting out and covering up, and drawing back into. I mean, you sort of have the whole gamut here. You can see even the lines on the black are made with a palette knife, just going back into the paint and scraping something out. It was too dark. It was too dense. It was too heavy. I had to bring light back in, and then going in, you could see with that sort of a black gray into the white, and the yellow. So again, it was really all about trying to, break up the space, but make it feel real and whole. And again, get something that had just a visual excitement, and a visceral excitement. Another painting from the same period. And this is all the sort of early to mid 80s in New York. And, sometimes, again, I could leave things. This one I left, I felt more satisfied, I guess, with what had happened. So this is the Alhambra, and this was one of the big moments in my life as an artist. I think it was 1989. We traveled to Spain and had just gotten married, took a month, and I went there, and I really had an epiphany, I think, as an artist. It was one of the first ones and one of the big ones. And I really, because I'd been thinking a lot about abstract painting, abstract art, and what is it? As I've mentioned subject matter. And when I was there, sitting there, it started to dawn on me that that the thing about the space and the thing about abstract painting was it didn't give you a literal space, and it didn't form your, ideas or narratives, or it didn't give you that kind of concrete direction or information. But what it did was it opened something up. And I realized, for me, that was a very big thing, to realize that painting could be a medium in which you could actually open people's minds and hearts up. And that was just, as I say, kind of revolutionary for me, that it, that through art you could challenge people and really help them to be bigger than what they were, be more than what they were. And it comes down even to the role of the artist in society and what are we really doing, A close-up. I mean, all of this, and I've since been to Morocco because this is really, all Moroccan, and the kind of repetition, the kind of rhythm, the kind of sound, the combination of the silence that you get, and at the same time the visual music that you can have, and the combination of even writing and pattern. And if you, like me, don't read or speak Arabic, it's all visual. And so it's like music. And that was very influential. And, you can even see the way color is separate, the way it's, each color holds its own space. These are really things that clearly I've utilized. And this was a very, very important moment. And I think you can see, I went back to New York and started painting, I think, paintings that felt it was a whole nother level I felt I was able to get to. And, the thing, I taught for quite a while too, and I used to always tell the students that everything, no matter, art, but anything that you want to go into, it's a two-handed process. And one is research and the other is practice. And, I used to quote Susan Sontag, who always said, before you can become a writer, you have to be a reader. So you have to do the research before you get to, the work. You can't just have the practice. It's a real two-handed thing. It's a real combination. So looking at art has always been really important. Yeah, this is a little bit fuzzy because, again, in those days, we didn't have cameras on our phones. We didn't have phones, actually. And, but one thing I see is that, I really, I like to be very direct. I'm very direct in the studio. Sometimes I'm very direct outside of the studio too. It doesn't always work as well, but in the studio, it works. I don't like to, once especially in those days, once I felt that I got something, it was there, I'd leave it. And when I say I got something, when I got a sense of the right scale and the right, and light or color, and trying to do as much as possible with as little as possible. I've always think the minimalists are also a strong part of my heritage, I'll say, my history, my background, what I've looked at. This one is, I don't know I don't see on my screen if we had all the sizes on next to the paintings, but anyway, this is a little bit smaller. That last one was 46 by 70 inches, and the one before that was 60 by 84. So they were pretty much body size. This is a little bit smaller. This is 43 by 45. And again, really just trying to bring a playfulness to the work, as well as a seriousness. And I guess I've always felt that, again, that's, the work has to have both. You have to really present the seriousness of your endeavor, but at the same time, in a kind of lighthearted way. So this is Rome. We went to Rome, 1989, and that's a younger me, and that's a beginning of a painting, and that's my studio. and it was fabulous. I felt, we went to Rome 89. No, we went to Rome actually 92. We went to Rome in 92. And I felt like at that point, I'd been working in New York for, close to like 10 years, a decade. And, when you're young, a decade's a long time. So I kind of got to the end of something there, and I really felt like I needed to get out. So we had the opportunity, went to Rome, and I started to let things back in the work. I felt like I had backed myself into a corner, I think. And the only way to do that, to get out of that is to sort of change, turn around. So. And this is the same painting a little bit further along. In fact, maybe finished. And I'm not even sure where this painting is. I'm hoping, I have a big roll. I'm hoping it's in there somewhere in storage. And it was very interesting for me now to look at the work, especially that last slide. This is, as I say, this is me trying to really go back and open the work up. It's kind of like returning to my graduate school roots and, going back and returning to my love of plants and trees and just really trying to open the, as I say, open the work back up and put breath back into it. As I say, I felt that I had kind of, things had shut down on me. And so went back to the roots. And also, looking at a lot of art, went back to Rome and traveled through Europe and traveled to North Africa and traveled to, Turkey and Greece and really saw, actually for a while, we thought we were going everywhere the Romans had been. Everywhere we went, there were Roman ruins, even England. Anyway, trying to do the same thing. The thing about painting is that you kind of always have to start at the beginning, every single one of them. I was working in oil. That's what I say. Up to this point, all the work is oil paint. And then, yeah, this is all oil. I was experimenting still with surfaces, and this is a very small painting. I think it's, let's see, it's 12 by 14 inches. And you can see there's something under there wiped down. And I just, again, sometimes out of just utter frustration, I just go back in and just with black, just draw, leave it at that. This is work on paper, which I started to do again for paper is so fabulous for so many reasons. It's cheap. You can get larger quantities of it. And so I started painting on paper, and I'm trying to think if they were acrylic or gouache and ink. I don't quite recall, but I do remember that summer it was very hot in Rome, and just again, just letting the drawing and bringing the color in very, very simply. Tried to be, again, very minimal, but maximal all at the same time. Thinking about cartoon, thinking about mostly line and getting a power in the line. And then letting the love for the forms come from my love of trees and plants. And this is a small, and this was, I think, 20 by 28. And I put this in because, well, you'll see the next slide, but there's a sort of a line to the left that, no, go back again, John. Go back to the last one. Yeah, the line to the left here which, when it's turned, it can be like the top of a column. And we saw a painting before this that had that. But in this one, I felt like it was a fetus, which is very funny because I was pregnant with my son. And so if you see the next slide, we went back to New York, and go to the next slide. And you'll see this is his room. And I just hung all the paintings. So it's living with art and living with a baby and trying to paint and work and do it all together. But I think it's important to bring in the fact that we have lives, and particularly as women, sometimes we have children, and this complicates one's life greatly. But totally joyous. So these are some works, as I say, coming back from Rome with a baby and no job and no studio. I ended up working on paper, and this is 8 large sheets of paper that I tacked together and just tried to take all of the work that I had done in Italy of all the trees and everything and, make it happen here. And we basically worked on the wall in the back of the loft where we slept. So, there's no excuses. If you have to do something, you do it no matter what. These were crazy paintings. So here you can actually see the loft and my taking that wall and just, as I say, making huge paintings, but made up of paper. And really just trying to invent, in a sense, a landscape and invent something that was just really go for the magic. At the time, too, I remember I had started going to poetry readings at St. Mark's, and I was introduced to the poet Leslie Scalapino, actually through my friend Norma Cole, the poet Norma Cole. And anyway, Leslie came over the play, Our Place, and came to the back, and I realized all of a sudden that there I am, like leading her into what was, a space with a loft, a bed and a crib and this crazy painting on the wall. And anyway, she loved it. So we ended up collaborating. A number of years later, she wrote me and said, "Look, we have to do something together." And anyway, since then I've gone on and I've collaborated with numerous poets. There's the last book called Actualities I did with Norma Cole, which is a good one. So. And these are, again, still working on paper, putting paper together, not being able to afford canvases and stretchers at this point. The work is I moved to water-based paint, so it's all acrylic and some fabric in here, and the one to the right. And just, again, trying to play and make dramatic transitions, but still get a kind of clarity. This is when we went back to Rome in 1996, and I had a show at Magazzino d'Arte Moderna, which is a gallery that still exists there. And by this time I was back teaching and, so had income and could, continue to paint. And you'll see, so there's painting, drawing, and then to the right, there's a shelf, and I was working in these fold-out books. I had bought all these Chinese fold-out books, and it was great because I got to really play with the idea of each spread would be in itself a complete work, but then it would transition to another spread and another spread, and another spread, but you could also pull it out and have like one long kind of, I thought of them kind of as Chinese paintings, that one thing just led to another. And they were all coming out of this same sort of natural referential drawing. And this is called The Nature of Line. And again, you can see, you know, as a painter, I just went back and forth. I mean, I think it was all there from the beginning, but it's really about being able to see it. One of the big things I find with being a more mature artist is just that. It's the ability to see. You can see more quickly, you can see more easily. And it reminds me of one of my yoga teachers saying that the biggest difference between a beginning student and an advanced student was not in their flexibility, it was in their ability to hear. She would say things like, "No, your other right leg." This, we're making a bit of a jump. I started working on printouts that, well, I guess two things were happening. One, I felt that as an artist, I must, but artists in general sometimes really have to deal with taboos. And so one of the taboos I decided to deal with was sexuality. And even, I will say, pornography. The other taboo, which was more personal, which was that of appropriation, because, you know, I came from the painter's painter world, and so to steal or to appropriate was something that I had been sort of against, or I just wasn't doing it. So these works tried to tackle both of them. And then I also brought in fabric. So it was about bringing in materials other than paint and really just trying to break some things open for myself and really sort of try to tackle, well, as I say, tackle the notion of taboos. And, you know, if we look at this one, my thinking was also about how we see, or how a person sees, and what we see first, and how that can be kind of manipulated on the canvas or in the drawing. You know, so it was really sometimes, you know, not hiding everything but the Japanese, you know, shunga, the point of entry, and to really play with pattern and play with movement and play with color and play with fabric on top of what they had already done was, it was very playful for me. And then sometimes I just exactly cover that up and let the limbs take it, you know, and the idea of drawing, that a line is a line, whether it's a foot or not, you know, but that it can be a foot. So it was really just mental playing, a lot of moving around and overlaying fabrics. So this is a painting, but it came directly out of these works, these small works that I called erotics. And it was the only time I really worked that directly, I think, from something on paper that I had done. And I just love all the feet and hands. They're kind of like leaves for me, and limbs and trees as well. So. And I brought in camouflage as fabric as well, you know, to play again conceptually. I think I was really trying to figure things out again, how much, you know, how could I make the work more challenging in a conceptual way? These are two books I had in the studio. One, the left is de Kooning, and the right is from this great book called Uzbekistan. It's Heirs to the Silk Road, one of my favorite books. Lots of fabrics and, tapestries and, all kinds of things in that book. Just fabulous. So it was really, you can see the sort of the combination. I've always felt that, an artist's work is about the assimilation of all of one's loves and thoughts and trying to bring them together in a fresh way and put them out there again. This is I think it's really the first show I had in New York. It was at the Q Art Foundation. And I was taking that same work, but allowing it to be maybe more painterly in a way, but still playing with and cropping from the drawings and blowing things up and overlaying, or a sense of overlaying with pattern and fabric and camouflage and the notion of seeing and sexuality and eroticism and all the things that we can find in art and that we need as human beings as well. This one is called Early Dawning. And you can see I'm slowly, I think, moving away from the reference, the source, the appropriation, the literalness of what I had been drawing and taking from, and really just allowing the work to become, I guess, more abstract, and really just letting the paint and the line and the color and the light just dominate. This one's called My Dream at Dawn. And so we're up to 2009 here. I was still working, as you can see, mostly horizontally, mostly rectangular and horizontal. That painting is called, I think that one is called Native Life. And it was the first one, again, sort of venturing out of, it was taken from the last one. I was thinking about My Dream at Dawn and thinking about rethinking it and making a new painting that kind of came out of it, which is often something that I do. And I think about Edvard Munch a lot, how when he would sell a painting, he would go back to the studio and paint it again. So it was like he never gave them up. And anyway, so this is me thinking the last painting and taking the, as I say, the reference, the line out of it and letting, just seeing if I can get it to hold its own. And because it is horizontal, I think there is a sense of landscape without it being literal. So I called it Native Life. And then you'll see the drawing next to it. So I was working in a square on paper and gouache. And these were happening, most of the paperwork was happening in Italy, where the studio is in the country. I mean, the house is in the country. And, we have big windows. We turn like an old barn, and where they kept the hay, we have studios. And looking out on the landscape, I think definitely, one's environment always gets into the work. And so I always find that interesting. And the next slide is actually the studio in Italy. And this image shows, these are the first works on paper, on the Indian paper, the Khadi Indian paper, that you have a whole selection. Actually, you have the last ones that I did. In fact, I guess about a year ago, last time I was in Italy in the studio, because we couldn't get there this summer. And so this is the beginning, and you have not the end, but the most recent work in the show. And I had gone down to Rome and saw Ellsworth Kelly had put up an exhibition at the Medici, the French resident place. I forget what it's called anyway. And so I came back to the studio and made these works, which very much come out of Kelly, who I've always liked, but also something more than that. There's something about the space and the land and looking out that window and letting that kind of space into the work. And so here, if you see, this is, again, 3 things that I've placed together. The top is Bomb Magazine, when they reproduced some of those works that I ended up calling the series New Alphabet. And they asked the poetry editor, Monica De La Torre, asked me if I would please get Norma Cole to submit something. So this was one of the first collaborations that we did in Bomb Magazine. And then below that is from a book, that's Matisse's book, and below that is de Kooning. And I've studied so many artists, but probably Matisse and de Kooning, I would say, in addition to Munch and maybe Picasso. And then, of course, Alma Thomas and Agnes Martin, so many others, but big influences and artists that I really looked hard at. So this is, I put this in there. So the studio picture came from 2010. And this is 2018. And this is my dealer, Jeannie Greenberg's stairwell. And she bought a collection of these works on paper and hung them. And, I just laugh because I think this is how long it takes sometimes to get the work into the world. And you don't stop you don't stop. You just keep pushing, but it definitely takes time. This is a 24 by 24 inch painting, but I think it's very revealing in the work that I've done more recently, in terms of how things meet, what an edge is, scale, surface. This is 2010 too. So. This one's called Body Logic, and it's bigger. It's 60 by 60. One of the things, I just love about painting is how it commands such silence. And it can, as I say, allow space for thought and allow dream time and allow the possibility for magic. Allow you to relax, encourage you to, I guess, to dream, Things that I think we need more and more these days. Especially, I will say, with the command over our lives that social media and computers and phones and all of this stuff has on us. I think it's more and more and more important to have art and painting and to live with it. So these are small paintings, not far from the big painting that you just saw, Body Logic. I titled these the peace paintings. You can see 1 or 2 of them kind of had some, without my meaning to, they had a reference to it. So the paintings came first and they informed me of the title, which is often the way it happens. And I liked how they kind of added to each other. One spoke to the next. And this is a show at Momenta, which I don't think exists any longer, but it was an alternative space for mostly conceptual works, but he did hang one painting show. This is called Space Embrace. And I remember I painted it, and I was offered a show at a small gallery in the Lower East Side, Peter Hyams' gallery, and he had somebody come by the studio who was going to write the press release. And he walked in and he looked at that and he said, "Oh my God, a big tit." And to tell you the truth, I hadn't seen that. But I really loved that because, I was, the work is so much about the body and so much about the form. And in one sense, so much about being female because I am. And anyway, so I thought it was just fabulous that he saw that. And now I have it hanging over the bed, I think. And what size is it? It's 48 by 48. So it's not huge, but. And again, it's just, I like things to have complexity in terms of possibilities and meaning. I never want things to be one thing. This one is called Game Day Bucket Go Boom, which was, the title came from, we have sports on a lot in the house. I mostly watch tennis, but anyway, there was a basketball game on at this point, and there was a commercial, I think for maybe Kentucky Fried Chicken or something. The woman sitting there said, "Game Day Bucket Go Boom." And I thought, wow, I'm taking that. And I thought this was the right painting for it. So, and it's a big one. It's about 74 by 74 inches. So you can see the square. I don't know what came first, the square or the circle, but it's always been something, having spent quite a number of years in Rome, and my favorite building there is the Pantheon, and the floor, of course, is all the circle and the square. It's so ancient and it's so classic, and so I never, when I see things and I have thoughts, they kind of reside in me until somewhere they come out without me having to actually think about it. So I got the circle and the square in the work, at least at this point. This is an install shot. You can see the gallery. It was a small, very narrow Lower East Side gallery. And I think I hung 3 of those big paintings. One more is in back, and then a small painting, maybe 1 or 2 small paintings. And that was the show. But it was really, at the time, it was so great. I'd been so starved for, the ability to put the work into the world, which is so, so important. It's not just important because things come back to you, but it's important for you to see your work in the world as an artist. And so this was kind of, I felt like, something was starting to happen. So this is the painting that you saw in that space, and it's called Coming Through Strange, which was also the title of the show. I used this title for the title of the show because I felt like that you have to come through something strange or it's not really real, because life is strange and it doesn't make sense. And we have to deal with things all the time that don't make sense and that we don't understand and that are difficult. And so again, how can that enter into the work, and how can that, and that is part of the process, I say, even if I have ideas for paintings, they usually don't work out, but something else shows up in its place. And a lot of kind of growing up as an artist was really just about being able to accept that. It's very hard to accept oneself. For me, it's been very hard to accept the work. But anyway, so this is called Coming Through Strange. It's like making sense and making no sense or nonsense all at the same time. Very important to have contradiction in the work. And I've always said, I think one of the great things about visual art is you can make contradiction visible. It's how black can be dark and light all at the same time. It's just magic. And the next one, this is maybe one of my favorite. Actually, I was getting good titles these. I don't know if my titles are still this good. This one is called The Black Sea Conversing with the Atlantic Ocean an Hour Before Dawn. I got that out of a book, and I remember reading that. I had painted the painting, and I was reading a book, and I read that line, and I knew that was the title. I also really like the idea of having almost a sentence be a title. Because I think I got one of the reviews I got for this show, the reviewer complained about that. The titles were too long. The next one has a great title too. It's called The Secret Life of Agnes Martin. And I stole the color. So I'm not going to tell you from who or from what paintings, but if any of you art lovers, painting lovers, I'll let you, maybe you'll tell me at the end. And I just love the title because, Agnes Martin's been a very important artist for me. And I always think about, she's known for her, how minimal and quiet and meditative the work is. But that there's just an inner life and a secret life to that woman that is just vibrant and funny and wonderful and crazy and insane and just fabulous. These are gouaches and drawings that actually ultimately ended up in the book I had mentioned, Actualities, that I did with Norma Cole, which you can find, I think, if you Google it, you'll find it. It's still available. This is from the Italy studio too. As I said, mostly in the summer, I kind of would recharge my batteries and also just really get into play mode and just open things up and just feed work, I think is the way I think of it. It was a way of really feeding the work. You have to feed the work, otherwise, like anything else, it can get stale, I guess, or something. And you got to look at art, and you got to be playful. You got to really keep a sense of humor and keep an openness. And you can't really see the lines in the line drawings, but some of them they're just one line. I had this idea to make all these drawings that were literally one line. So I just kept the pencil on the paper and kept moving around and filling the space that way. This one I put in because it's not very often you get to see in an artist studio unfinished paintings or things one's thinking about or working on. And I'm always thinking about transitions. So just like in the previous image with all the gouaches and the line drawings, I was trying to see how could I get that into painting? How could I utilize that? Could I actually really get that to be as full as I did in the work on paper? This is about 2014, which is amazing because 6 years, but it seems like a lifetime ago to me. In the next image, you're going to see this painting on the left. You're going to see it finished. And I called it Mad Love because there's nothing better than mad love. We don't want to admit it. We want to think money is everything, but it's not. It helps, but it's not. This is from a show I did in Hudson, upstate New York. And the dealer was somebody that I had met a long time ago, Steve Isas. He used to, I did jobs up until, I worked other jobs for a long time. And before I started to teach, I used to do design work. At that time we I don't think there were computers. And so we did everything by hand. Anyway, I worked at like Vogue and Butterick Patterns and did layouts and paste up and all of that. And he was one of the main designers, I guess, or something. He wasn't exactly my boss, but I met him there. And then, so it was really amazing. Years and years and years later, he writes me and says, I've opened this gallery. I've always loved your work. I want to do a show. So we did a show. We actually did 2 shows together. And you can see I started putting those single works on paper together and sort of creating a larger experience. And a series of small paintings, I think 24 by 20. Trying to get a lot of space in them, a lot of color. I wanted things to be both close up and far away. I mean, I just really wanted the world in this work. This is a painting titled The Magnetic Attraction of Sky and Earth Revealed in Rainbows. And it's for Nikita St. Phal and Jean Tingley. And if you know their work, you'll see, of course, Nikki's on the right with all the color and Jean is on the left with in metal, in grays and white. And again, trying to make dramatic shifts and big transitions in the work and yet have them be smooth. Just like life, as Terry said, trying to get life. I like that, Terry, you said, all of the art history and all of, so much of it. But in the end, you said, but also life. Like, how do we get our lives in our work? This one is called Emerald Waves, Blood Hues, and Wild Blues. And it's for Gerald Visner, or Weisner, who I think was a professor, a Native American writer, and wrote some great books that I read. And it's the only painting I've ever painted where I knew I had that title and it did influence some of the color in the work. So it's the only time that a title kind of maybe possibly preceded the painting. All the others, the painting came first and then I had to find the title. And this one is called How to Live on Planet Earth. And it was painted for a show that Fong Bui of the Brooklyn Rail curated that was after Sandy. And we were really, a lot of us were really devastated by that hurricane and the subsequent flooding. In fact, the winds didn't get us in New York, but the water did. And even in my building, the water came up. I'm right on the Newtown Creek, on the edge of Greenpoint, which is Brooklyn. And there's a body of water called the Newtown Creek, which separates Brooklyn from Queens, Long Island City, Queens. And the water rose and came in and came so far up that we lost all electricity. I didn't have lights for at least a month. And Fong, who has a studio around the corner, was on the first floor and he lost everything because of the floods. And a lot of artists were affected by them. So anyway, he put together a show and I painted this painting and that's the title. I think it's something we need to think about more and more. This one's called Deep Kissing, and it's for Hudson, who, anyone familiar with the New York art scene, there was a gallery for a long time called Feature Inc. And if you knew Feature Inc., you knew Hudson. Anyway, he passed away too young and tragically. And I read in his obit that he had, before he became a dealer, he had done a performance and he called it Deep Kissing. So, and I had just painted this painting anyway, it all seemed to have meaning. This is the studio, and it's a view. The one on the left is called Discovered in Translation, and the one on the right is called Wild Blue Yonder. They're both 2014 and 2015. And, Discovered in Translation really was, again, the titles are very specific to the works. That painting was one that went through numerous iterations until it kind of emerged, until I found it. And I think maybe too, I'd seen that wonderful film with one of my favorites, Bill Murray, Lost in Translation, maybe the one that's in Tokyo. So anyway, language comes out of the blue. And the one on the right is Wild Blue Yonder. This is at the Independent Art Fair. And, I did that little show on the Lower East Side and then that just didn't work out any longer. And so I was once again with no gallery and no opportunity. And Brendan Dugan from Karma came over and I had just completed this paper piece on the right that you see and I called it The Large Dream because I had done, we'd already been talking and I had this book that I'd been working on called Portrait and a Dream. of images. And actually, you know what I didn't include anyway, you can also find that book. It's a combination of both drawings that I had done out of Picasso's Weeping Woman, that all the studies he did for the Guernica. And then it came out of two postcards, one The Weeping Woman and one Bernini's St. Teresa in Ecstasy, which I'd seen so many times in Rome, which is one of my favorite sculptures. I mean, I love Bernini anyway, but his St. Teresa is amazing. And the combination of those two images, those postcards together, sort of out of that grew this body of work that I did. And as I say, each spread was made up of a drawing of the Weeping Woman. And on the other half, instead of literally the Bernini, I just went with the ecstasy. And for me, ecstasy, I guess, has to do with color. And so, and I'd already been working. It was also like bringing my work into this kind of collaboration with myself and these other artists. Anyway, Brendan came in and said, let's do this. Let's present this at the Independent Art Fair. And it was, really fantastic. And the painting at the end, you see, we needed one other thing. And I had just finished that painting. That was the first 88 by 78 inch painting. And I knew he was coming that day. And so I went into the studio, and I think I'd started it, but I knew I had to finish it. And I did. I finished it. And then I decided to call it Rain Dance, because I thought I had been in a drought for so long. And I thought, man, if I can't use this, if it doesn't rain soon, I'm going to die. And anyway, things went very well. Sold the paintings, a lot of the work, and things really picked up after that. So it was a good thing. I think the next slide is just an image of Rain Dance. Yeah. And here's the large dream in the studio. And I had this fantastic paper that I had saved. I knew I wanted to do one piece with it. And I only had so many sheets, so I really couldn't fuck up. This is called Cheek to Cheek. It's about 78 by 68, and it's 2015. This is called Last Light of the Sun. Same size. I really fell in love with this size. It's just sort of big enough and yet not gigantic. And this I showed in London at Duro Olowu, the Nigerian-British clothing designer, fashion designer, put together an exhibition called Making and Unmaking. And it was fabulous because as a designer and a lover of art, he was free as a curator to incorporate all kinds of things in this exhibition, from everything that he loved. And he's just a lover of art and textiles and photography and fashion and everything. And anyway, so he did it at the Camden Art Center there, so they gave him the whole museum, the whole space, or the whole art center. And I showed he took two paintings. And it was great because he had figurative art, he had abstract art, he had, as I say, all kinds of medium, and it all worked together. It was all created this very exciting and like approachable. I mean, it was accessible is the word I'm thinking of. It was very accessible. He somehow wasn't constrained like maybe many art historians may have felt in terms of making sense. He didn't even have any, it was like visual sense. And he actually only wanted one painting from me, but I painted two, and I sent him a photo, and he said, I'll take them both. This one is called A Detail of a Late Afternoon. Same size. Yeah, so you see, it was exhibited in the Frieze London Art Fair. And it was when I first started to show at Salon 94, and they told me when they came over, I had a photograph of one of the great Nikki de St. Phal sculpture she did in Stockholm at the museum, where you enter into the pregnant Nana's vagina. And I had that image on the wall anyway. And then they told me they were going to do this, and they were getting Nikki de St. Phal some of her sculptures and work and table and chairs and everything. So they were going to put it together. So it's a great moment to be able to have my work with somebody whose work I loved. She's so crazy and so radical. Another art fair. This is Zona Mako. And art fairs, I think they got to be, so many of them, unsustainable, but at the same time, it's great to be able to have work out into the world in many different places and to see it with other things. So like everything, it has its pros and cons. This painting is called Night Watch from 2016. Same size. These paintings are all 78 by 68. And of course, Night Watch, a lot of times I reference other art paintings, This one is called Olympia's Gaze. It was shown, I think, at New York Frieze. I remember that. And I really did feel like it was, in a way, the eye of Olympia looking back. I mean, we look at Manet's Olympia, and she is, we are the voyeurs, and she's there in all her naked beauty being looked at, but she's also looking back. So I guess I sort of internalized that in a way, although I wasn't having those thoughts while I made the painting, but I certainly had them after, hence the title. This one's called Indian Summer. And these works, which are all 2016, you're going to see I included two works from this period in the show at Fort Worth. Because I wanted to have a little, since it's a museum, I wanted to have a little expanse of time and not just all have recent work. So I did choose two paintings from 2016 to put in. And here's one of them, The Color of Water. So you can go see this painting. Yeah, here's another one called Wonderland. And you can see the drawing is all somewhat similar. And yet how the space is filled up and what I do with the color keeps changing. And what I do with the line. This is the other one, I think, that is in your show. It's called Standing Rock. You know, years ago, I had an artist over my studio who looked at the work. I mean, really, like after I was in graduate school, so many, many, many years ago. And she said, you know, I had met her socially, and her response in my studio was that, you know, Marina, you're such a sort of passionately political person, and yet I don't see it in the work. And she really took me back. And I really thought, what? You know, but it takes a long time. It's like how to get yourself and how to get your politics in the work without being, without hitting somebody over the head. Because you don't change anybody's heart or mind by doing that. The only way you really affect any kind of change is to give them something. You know, you have to really give them something real. And so that's what the work is really about. And the titles and what I've been able to do with language has just hopefully moved it in that direction. It's about offering another way of thinking about them, maybe in and opening a way in, and also more than that. It's like the peace paintings. I used to laugh, and I think now every time anyone says and references those works, they have to say peace. It's like Meta Peace, the basketball player, right? Didn't he change his name? And I just thought that was such a brilliant move, such a subtle and radical and brilliant move. Anyway, so here's Standing Rock. It's my environmental work. This one's called Pussy Riot. Stolen from those creative Russian activist performance artists. And it lives in Mexico now. A wonderful Mexican collectors. That one is called What Venus Said to Mars. Came to me in a dream. And this is an installation shot at the Rosenwald Wolf Gallery in University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And here's the painting itself, What Venus Said to Mars. Soft Power, which was also the title of my first show with Salon 94. And it also, as I mentioned to Terry before, the show opened not quite 4 years ago. It opened right either before or after the inauguration of the last president. And I'd been thinking, like many of us, that there was a different scenario laid out for us, which didn't come to be. And I was totally shook up and thought, wait a second, this throws the whole thing off. And then I realized, no, it doesn't. It's just all the more needed. And I hung this show, this soft power show, and you'll see eventually some install shots. And I have to tell you, people in New York, and I imagine elsewhere, were so depressed about the outcome of the last election, of the previous election. And they went to see this show and they wrote me thank you notes. They said, "You made me feel so much better." And I just, again, it came back home that, if we don't uplift, what are we doing? You know. This one is called Alice When She's 10 Feet Tall. It was also in that show, as were these two works. That's Bigger on the left and Standing on My Head on the right. They're all 88 by 78 inches. And this one, it's called Second Sun. These are all small gouaches that we hung upstairs. And you can see, again, I said I do a lot of these gouaches in Italy over the summer because it's a way, it was a way for me to do a lot of work and also small enough and light enough I could actually bring it back to New York. And so feed, as I say, feed the studio, the New York studio. That's called Dream Lover. And it was put in a window. Ugo Rondinone has a window on Great Jones Street that he hangs art in. And I forget what year he hung this, but this is Wildflower. And it was in a show at Listen Gallery in New York City, their 10th Avenue space, where we showed, it was curated by Jeannie Freilich, and she showed 4 painters, myself and Joanna Pousset-Dart and Leon Polk-Smith and Paul Feely. Both Paul and Leon are no longer with us, but their work is, and I love both of their works. And Joanna and I are here. And anyway, it was a really wonderful show that Jeannie put together. And then she did something unusual. She got these cases and we all presented like other kinds of works, either sculpture or that's a little Paul Feely paper sculpture. That book there, that fold-out book, is a book of etchings, or a book that I had made with etchings. And again, rethinking those Chinese fold-out books I did years ago. And Joanna presented drawings as well. This is at Albert Baronian Gallery in Brussels, though I think he closed or morphed or changed or something. Oh yeah, his show was called Artemisia. This is at the American Academy of Arts and Letters. And That's called January Out My Window. This is called One Song. I painted it when I came back. You know, I'm usually just raring to go when I get back from the summer because I haven't had the opportunity there to paint really big paintings. I mean, I have painted a few, but it's slower and I don't have the kind of supplies. So when I get back to New York, I'm just like ready to go. And this one just came out of me like boom. It was like one song. So. This is a group show from the summer called Nothing But Flowers at Karma Gallery, and a big, big group show. And that's New Morning right there, smack in the middle. That is, I love these kind of one painting window spaces. This is in Stockholm, Gallery Nordenhaka. They have a space called Focus. And that was in 2018. And that painting is called The Secret of Greek Grammar. Which I kind of stole from Osip Mandelstam. I was reading about him and I love his poetry, and he loved the Greek language, particularly because of Greek grammar. And my heritage is Greek, and so I thought it was kind of funny. And this is a show actually in Stockholm, not at Nordenhaka, but at Larsen Warner. That was about a year ago, actually. And that painting on the right is called Ghosted. I'd heard that term, which I didn't know, about how people ghost each other, young men and women, I guess. I like new language. And I like when language is reinvented and given new meaning. These are some small 24 by 20s. They're, yeah. I think I call them all song lines, actually. This is another install view in Stockholm. This is called Something to Dance To. I think it went to Miami. Purple Heart, which is also in Fort Worth, sitting next to Standing Rock and The Color of Water. So you can go see it. This is from an exhibition I did at the Madu. It's a nature conservancy in Sagaponack on Long Island. And I did a small exhibition of 8 small paintings, all song lines, I called them. This is an art fair, I think Art Basel. And that's on the left, Continental, and on the right is Days and Nights. And, you know, Days and Nights, I mean, I was thinking about titles and what could be a title for that painting. But I was also thinking about I was painting, that painting actually is in Fort Worth, and it was also in the show in New York. And I was thinking about measure and how important measure is. And even about the Great Pyramids And the one thing we know, there's so many things written about the pyramids, but they actually know so little. But what they do know is the measure, and that the idea of measure was really communicated. And they're very precise, extremely, extremely precise. And I think there's an intelligence in that, and a magic and kind of a mystical aspect to that, combined with a scientific precision that I find extraordinary. So the notion of measure, and days and nights are a measure. So these are paintings that are also in the show. You have Chops in Fort Worth, and it was in the show in New York. Studio shot. It was on the cover of the Brooklyn Rail, along with an interview that I did with Alex Bacon that's also in the book that I understand as being offered in Fort Worth at the museum. And that's also next to, on the back, that's the front of the Brooklyn Rail, and the back is a print of mine that I did at ULAE, Universal Limited Art Editions in New York, where I do prints as well as a couple other places and some other books. You can see I still have out my Uzbekistan book, and anyway, great books of art. That's from the exhibition I called Anemones at Salon 94, New York, about a year ago. And that one is called Dinah's Mixed Emotions. More of the song lines were upstairs. A studio shot of two other paintings that were in the show. The one on the left is Oz, and the one on the right is Mambo. It's my always shifting wall, but I was over Mary Heilman's studio and Long Island, and she has a wall. We all have walls, and she told me it was her thinking wall, and I really loved that. I said, yeah, that's right. That's a thinking wall there. That's Les Demoiselles, which I actually painted for the show in Fort Worth, which you can go see, which sits next to the last image, which is Lunar Logic. So they're both 2019 at this point. It's funny, they feel very recent, but it took a while for us to get them out into the world. So now I think we're going to leave a slide up and we're going to hear some questions.
That is the plan. Thank you so much. That was very generous. What a wonderful array. Okay, so our time is a little short, so I'm going to be selective with the questions. My apologies. I think anybody who asks a question will get at least one. There were several questions. Let's see. William says, I'm more familiar with you using acrylic paint, not oil. When did you make the switch to acrylics?
When I was pregnant.
Smart. All right, Gwen says, please help me understand what you mean by scale in the 24 by 24 in Body Logic.
Well, I think the understanding, we all understand what size is, but scale is really about relation. It's really about the relationship of things. But there's also the relationship not only of things within the painting. There's also relationship of things outside of the painting. There's a relationship with a human being and what the size is. When I said scale with that painting and with Body Logic, it has to do with that, the relationship of the work to a human being.
Nice. That's good. Okay, can you see these? Am I reading to you these? Okay, yeah. I don't know why I'm reading them.
It helps me to read them too, otherwise.
No, I'll read them. Okay. Sarah says, you talk about, as you progress through bodies of work, quote unquote, letting go of line, of reference, of spaces you've been in, etc. Why is it important to you to release things? What does it allow you? That's an interesting question.
It is. I guess, I've never wanted to be held down by anything. And that for me, the challenge is always to work in whatever space I'm in. I mean, literally the studio, but also the space of the painting and mm-hmm. the spaces that I'm working in, is to then somehow maybe open them up so that they don't close down on me. One of the reasons I think it took me so long to kind of find my form in a way, even though when I look back and what you just got to see, it all adds up. Now I look back and think, oh, it all adds up. But I tell you, for a long time, I didn't feel that way. I wasn't an artist that, I never felt there was any kind of logic to things. And if anything, I felt my trajectory was more of a spiral than it was a linear. It wasn't one step in front of the other. It was more going around and coming back to the same place, but in a different place and going back. And so this notion of the spiral actually, and that image even, in fact, is quite important to me. Mm-hmm. So if maybe that answers it. I mean, and I also think that I would change the work when I felt that I was backing myself into a corner. I was very wary of having somebody else label what I did. And so I think that even the writing the lines between imagery and non-imagery in terms of using size, both small and large, just in every way, I tried to, my whole life is about that. It's really about trying to take in more than one thing and not be, as I say, sort of labeled.
Okay, that was good. Yeah, sometimes letting go makes room, I guess. First of all, so happy to see you, Akwi. Can you speak to how negative space influences your work? I recall very early work of yours in Roma of Villa Borghese. I'm going to get that wrong.
Villa Borghese, it's okay, yeah.
Which blew me away, and the trees. It really focused on the negative space created by nature.
Okay, so I'm going to out Delia. Delia Beisho was a friend of mine in art school, and we went together to Rome as students. The work that you saw from Rome that I did, obviously I did as a much older artist. I mean, I wasn't old, but I was probably closer to 30. And, but what she's recognizing is what we saw and experienced and how I got that into the work at the time. And again, it was these early loves, I think. I'll tell one short little story. When I was, before I traveled, before I really got out and saw anything, I thought that when I looked at painting, for me, like many others, you sat in a dark classroom and you saw images projected of other, of old paintings on the wall. And I would see these paintings with, for instance, trees. And I really felt that the painters had like gone and looked them up and picked their favorite ones and put them in. And I got off the plane in Italy, in Rome, and I looked around and, talk about epiphany. I realized that they just painted what they saw. Mm-hmm. And that was a very big thing for me to realize. And so I think when I went back to Rome, I had fallen in love as a student with so many things. The art, I was turned on to Caravaggio and so many artists, and the food and the fashion and the culture, everything, the language, it all really came in. Anyway, so when I went back a little bit older, I was able to, and I was both able to, and I allowed myself, after being in New York for 10 years, to kind of go back to something that I had loved. And that was a really important moment in terms of the work. And like the last question, it allowed me to open things up again. So
great. I'm so glad that Delia could be with us. That's nice. And this one is so sweet. Judy says, this work provides joyful contemplation and escape from our dark world. I think you spoke to that a little bit. I'm so sorry. You cannot hear the applause and see our appreciation in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's so sweet. As is she. Gwen couldn't stop. She was so excited. Let's see. How are your works on paper usually hung in the gallery? They look like they are floating on the walls.
Well, this is the first time, and I gave Allison a lot of credit. We had discussed, I just basically gave her all those works, and the gallery framed them up, I think, and she installed them. And I thought she did a great job. I love that. And actually think we should stay together as one piece. I think it looks so great. But, they can be hung all kinds of ways. I think one of the things people like about those works is that they get to involve themselves and their visual, acumen can come into play. It's like Jeannie Greenberg, where she hung them in her stairwell going up. And so you get to experience them all together, but also individually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you said something about alphabet, and I thought your work operates a lot like language. I can see people making arrangements kind of.
Exactly. In fact, I will tell you that title, I sent an image, now in the age of phones and these, texting, we're always sending images. And I took an image of those early works and sent them to my good dear friend, the poet Norma Cole. And she wrote me back 2 words, new alphabet. I said, I'm very lucky.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was the title.
All right. This is a good one. I'm going to give Gwen another question. The bar of paint along the top of so many, does it have meaning for you? I think that's really observant.
Yeah, and actually that came out of my going back to Greece and to Athens. And going back, I went to Greece when I was very young. I think I was about 12 years old. It was a family trip, sort of back to the homeland, one of those back to the homeland trips. Anyway, I went to, I just remember, and as I say I was 12 years old. I remember 2 things, one in Crete and one in Athens, that struck me very, very strongly. And, I should have known, or my parents should have known then, they had an artist on their hands. But one was the temple of the Karyatids. And, to see those, female figures holding up those lintels, maybe they're called, or whatever, those, carrying those weights. So those drawings, in fact, I did a whole series of work on paper I called the Karyatids. And the other place that we went to that really struck me, and I still haven't gone back, was Crete, and seeing the Minoan paintings. As I say, I remember as a very young child being completely moved, and I knew I was connected. I think I must have always known I was an artist.
Yeah, that comes across with you. Okay, I'm going to skip to Mine just to give somebody else here. Mine says, Marina, thank you so much for this generous talk. You speak so beautifully about the work. You had mentioned earlier that young artists are often involved primarily with mark making. As a young artist myself, I absolutely feel that, and I am eager to move forward. I am wondering if you could talk a bit more about how you pushed your mark making to where it is now, to the powerfully discrete colors and spaces of your paintings. Wow, well put.
Um, Thank you, Mina. Great question. I think for myself that I did realize that I had to get rid of the gesture in the work. And when I say that, I mean I had to get rid of the kind of gesture that we, associate, especially with abstract painting.
Mhm.
And it took me some time to realize that and to try to get the sense of movement that we get with gesture, but in a different way. And so the line and the edge and the shape and the curve and all of that I developed, I guess, as my response to the mark making.
That's great. Carrie says, "How do you begin your days?" You do elicit that, I have to say. You wonder about the life that goes with these paintings.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. During COVID, when we went into lockdown, I got up and I did these fabulous breathing exercises on my back. And I thought, you know what? And I did them. There's a wonderful woman who's a good friend of mine, but just a genius in terms of the body. And her name's Yamana. And you can also find her either on Facebook or Instagram. And she's amazing. Anyway, she did free breathing. I guess you could call them seminar. They're I don't know, the exercises, whatever. And so that's how I began my days. Otherwise, I get up and make breakfast.
That's breathing. That makes sense. Breath
Yeah.
matters, and that gets to the title of your talk tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see, Veronica. Does it bother you when people see things in your work, when they give it their own interpretation?
No, absolutely not. Doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
we you put the work into the world and then it brings back whatever it can. And we all enter into uh, life and art with our own experiences, and hopefully that they just continue to broaden and that we're brave enough. The big thing is no fear. The big thing is to realize that, honestly, you got one life and live it. Go ahead.
Okay, Davian says, what's your thought process like when deciding which colors to put together? Really love how your colors always complement each other and fit together.
Mm. Sometimes you just have to give the painting what it needs. I mean, I have ideas about color, and if I try to do something, it has to do with maybe surprising myself. I feel like I'm the one who knows the work. I'm the closest to the work. And if I can surprise myself, then I will surprise other people. But otherwise, it's really just not about what I want. It's about what the painting needs.
That's fantastic. There's an artist I admire very much, and that's that's how he knows, is when the work surprises him, he knows it'll surprise the viewer, which I think is lovely. Um, okay, I just want to say before I end with Gwen's last remark, that every time you show the painting Oz, you need to show it with that little brown stool.
Oh,
It's fantastic. They're very much in conversation.
yeah, they are. That's an African stool, and that painting has blackness really in it.
Yeah, I can feel it. And then the other thing is on uh, Coming Through Strange, which again is just a phenomenal title. I just like everything that does. But bravo on that small ochre move, just a little ochre at the bottom that is like, pow, it's so good. Um, it's so good. Anybody who didn't see that, go back and watch the recording of the YouTube of this and see that little ochre move in that painting. It's amazing. And then Gwen says, love it. And James Russell says, amen.
Thank you
Oh,
all.
well, thank you. That was fantastic. So generous. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.